Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring some pretty mind-bending stuff, so get ready.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild ride.
We're talking about the world of Aleister Crowley. And specifically, we're going to try to unpack one of his most famous and maybe most puzzling ideas, his equation 0 equal 2.
Which he claimed was like a theory of the universe.
Right, like a complete worldview summed up in just three little symbols. So before we even attempt to understand what 0 equal 2 could possibly mean, maybe we should back up a bit and talk about Crowley himself.
Yeah, good idea.
Because I think to understand his ideas, you really need to understand the man behind them, right?
Absolutely. I mean, Crowley was a fascinating, complex, and very controversial figure.
That's for sure. He was an English occultist, ceremonial magician, poet, mountaineer, and even a spy, believe it or not.
Yeah, he lived a pretty incredible life full of adventure and scandal and all sorts of interesting stuff.
So where do we even begin with someone like that?
Well, I think a good place to start is with his early life, because it was his upbringing that really set the stage for his later spiritual journey.
Okay, so tell me about a childhood.
Well, he was born into a wealthy and very religious family. His parents were Plymouth Brethren, which is a very strict and fundamentalist Christian sect.
Wow, so pretty much the opposite of what Crowley would later become known for.
Yeah, exactly. And as you might imagine, young Alistair didn't exactly take to his parents' religious beliefs.
What happened? Did he rebel?
Oh yeah, big time. He rejected their faith pretty early on and even started calling himself the Beast just to provoke them.
Oh, wow, so he was kind of a troublemaker from the start.
You could say that, but I think it's important to remember that his rebellion wasn't just about being difficult. It was about a genuine search for truth. He was looking for something more meaningful than what he'd been taught.
And that search eventually led him to the world of occultism, right?
Right. In his early 20s, Crowley joined the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which was a secret society that focused on the study and practice of magic and esoteric knowledge.
So this was like his introduction to all these alternative spiritual traditions.
Exactly, and he dove headfirst into it. He quickly rose through the ranks of the Golden Dawn and absorbed everything he could about Hermetic Kabbalah, which is a system of Jewish mysticism that played a big role in his later work.
So the Golden Dawn was kind of like his spiritual boot camp, in a way.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it wasn't long before he started branching out on his own and developing his own unique system of magic and philosophy.
Okay, so we've got the rebellious childhood, the deep dive into occultism with the Golden Dawn. What else was going on in Crowley's life at this time that might have influenced his thinking?
Well, there's one more piece of the puzzle that's really crucial to understanding his philosophy, and that's his encounter with Eastern spirituality, specifically Buddhism.
Oh, interesting. So this is where the Eastern and Western influences start to come together.
Right. In 1900, Crowley met a guy named Alan Bennett, who was also a member of the Golden Dawn. But Bennett was a little different from the other members. He was really drawn to Eastern mysticism and was planning a trip to Sri Lanka to study Buddhism.
And Crowley went with him, right?
He did. He followed Bennett to Sri Lanka and spent several months there immersing himself in Buddhist teachings and practices.
Wow, so he was really open to exploring all sorts of different spiritual traditions.
He was, and this experience had a profound impact on him. It introduced him to ideas like non-duality, emptiness, and the interconnectedness of all things, concepts that would become central to his own philosophy.
Okay, so now we've got this fascinating mix of influences: rebellious Christianity, Western occultism, and Eastern mysticism. And it's out of this that he develops his famous equation 0 equal 2.
Right, and that's where things start to get really interesting, because it's in this equation that he tries to bring all these seemingly disparate ideas together into a unified worldview.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued, but before we dive into the equation itself, can you give us a little background on the Buddhist concept of two truths? Because I think that's really key to understanding what Crowley was getting at.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Buddhism, there's this idea that there are two levels of truth: ultimate truth and conventional truth.
Okay, and what's the difference between those?
Well, conventional truth is the truth of our everyday experience. It's the world of appearances, where we see things as separate and distinct, subject to time and space and cause and effect.
So it's kind of like our default way of seeing the world.
Right, and it's not that conventional truth is wrong, it's just that it's not the whole picture.
Okay, so what's the whole picture then? What's ultimate truth?
Ultimate truth is a little harder to grasp because it goes beyond our ordinary way of thinking. It's the truth of emptiness or sunyata, which isn't about things not existing, but about things not existing in the way that we usually think they do.
Okay, so not emptiness in the sense of nothing being there, but emptiness in the sense of things being empty of inherent existence.
That's right. Ultimate truth points to the interconnectedness of all things, the fact that everything is impermanent and constantly changing and dependent on everything else for its existence.
So ultimate truth is kind of seeing the underlying unity of everything beyond all the labels and categories and distinctions that we create in our minds.
Exactly. And that's a pretty radical idea, right? It challenges our whole way of understanding the world.
It definitely does. And how does this relate back to Crowley's equation?
Well, Crowley's equation 0-2 is essentially a way of expressing this idea of two truths, but in a very concise and symbolic form.
Okay, so walk us through it. What does each symbol represent?
The 0, Crowley said, represents nothingness or the void, which is kind of like that state of sunyata, that ultimate truth of emptiness and interconnectedness.
Okay, that makes sense. And the 2?
The 2 represents duality, the world of apparent separation and distinction that we experience in our everyday lives. So it's kind of like that conventional truth.
Ah, okay. And the equal sign?
That's the really interesting part. The equal sign is what bridges those two realities. It's saying that these two seemingly opposite truths are actually connected, that they're two sides of the same coin.
So it's not about saying that one truth is right and the other is wrong, but that they both have their own validity depending on how you look at things.
Exactly. And that's a really key point, because I think a lot of people misinterpret Crowley's equation as saying that reality is an illusion, that nothing really exists.
Right, right. But it's more nuanced than that.
Yeah, it's more about understanding that reality has multiple layers and that there's a deeper level of truth that underlies our everyday experience. And that deeper truth is one of unity and interconnectedness.
Okay, that's starting to make more sense. But how did Crowley propose that we actually access this deeper truth, this state of unity and interconnectedness?
Well, he believed that one way to do this was through the study and practice of what he called magic, spelled with a K at the end. And he had a very specific definition of magic.
What was his definition?
He defined it as the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will.
Okay, so not the kind of magic you see in fairy tales and fantasy novels.
Right. Crowley's magic was about understanding the laws of the universe and using those laws to affect change in your own life and in the world around you.
So it's about taking control of your own destiny, in a way.
You could say that. And a big part of Crowley's magic was about exploring and understanding your own consciousness, your own inner world.
Okay, and how does that connect to his overall philosophy?
Well, Crowley believed that the universe is a reflection of our own consciousness, that the outer world is a mirror of the inner world. So by understanding ourselves, by exploring the depths of our own being, we can also come to a deeper understanding of the universe and our place within it.
Okay, so it's like that hermetic principle, as above, so below.
Exactly. And Crowley took that principle very seriously. He believed that by changing ourselves, by aligning ourselves with our true will, we could also change the world around us.
Okay, so we're starting to get into some pretty deep territory here. We've got the two truths, the equation 0 equals 2, the idea of magic as a way to effect change, and this concept of the universe as a reflection of our own consciousness.
And all of this is really just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Crowley's philosophy. There's so much more to explore.
Well, I'm ready to keep diving deeper.
Me too.
But maybe we should save that for part 2 of our deep dive.
Sounds good to me.
So stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back after a short break. Okay, so we're back, and we've just begun to scratch the surface of Aleister Crowley's fascinating and often controversial philosophy.
Right. We've talked about his background, his equation 0 actors 2, and how that relates to the Buddhist concept of two truths.
But there's still so much more to unpack.
Yeah, definitely.
So where do we go from here?
Well, I think the next logical step is to dive into one of Crowley's most well-known and perhaps most misunderstood concepts, his idea of true will.
Okay, true will. I've heard that term before, but I'm not entirely sure what it means.
Yeah, it's one of those terms that gets thrown around a lot in esoteric circles, but it can be kind of slippery to define.
So what did Crowley actually mean by true willing?
Well, in a nutshell, Crowley believed that that each of us has a unique path we're meant to follow in life, a sort of a blueprint for our soul's evolution.
Okay, so kind of like our destiny or our purpose in life.
Yeah, kind of, but it's not so much about having a predetermined fate, but more about discovering and aligning ourselves with our deepest nature, with what truly motivates us and brings us joy.
So it's about finding our authentic selves, in a way.
Exactly. And Crowley believed that this true will is often hidden from us, buried beneath layers of social conditioning and self-doubt and all the other stuff that gets in the way of us living our most authentic lives.
Okay, so if our true will is hidden, how do we actually uncover it? How do we know what our true path is?
That's the million-dollar question. And Crowley didn't offer any easy answers, but he did believe that the process of discovering your true will is an ongoing one, a journey of self-exploration and self-discovery. He actually outlined a whole system of techniques and practices designed to help people tap into their true will.
Like what?
Well, one of his key recommendations was to develop what he called knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. And that might sound a little, well, intense, but
Yeah, it's a bit much, isn't it? Makes you think of like winged being and heavenly choirs and stuff.
right, but it's actually not as literal as it sounds. Crowley was very fond of using evocative language and symbolism, and this is a good example of that.
Okay, so what was he actually getting at with this holy guardian angel business?
He was talking about connecting with a deeper part of yourself, a source of wisdom and guidance that resides within each of us.
Okay, so it's not so much about an external being, but more about an inner connection.
Exactly. And Crowley believed that by cultivating this connection, by learning to listen to that inner voice, we could gain access to a deeper understanding of ourselves and our true purpose in life.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this connects to the idea of true will.
Yeah, so for Crowley, achieving knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel was really about aligning yourself with your true will. It was about bridging the gap between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind, so that you could tap into that deeper level of knowing and understanding.
So it's about integrating all the different parts of yourself in a way.
Exactly. And that's no easy feat. It requires a lot of self-awareness and honesty and a willingness to face those parts of ourselves that we might not always like.
Yeah, that sounds challenging to say the least. So did Crowley offer any practical advice on how to actually go about this process of integrating ourselves and finding our true will?
He did. He was a big believer in the power of ritual and symbolism and using those things to access and transform your consciousness. He also drew inspiration from a variety of different spiritual traditions, including yoga and meditation and even some elements of psychology.
So it sounds like he was really encouraging people to find their own unique path, to experiment with different techniques and find what worked best for them.
Exactly. He wasn't a big fan of dogma or rigid rules. He believed that everyone's journey is different and that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to spiritual growth.
Okay, that's actually kind of refreshing. So much of spirituality can feel very prescriptive, like you have to follow a certain set of rules or beliefs.
Right. And Crowley was all about breaking down those barriers and encouraging people to think for themselves. He was more interested in helping people discover their own truth than in imposing his own beliefs on them.
I like that. So if discovering your true will is about connecting with your deepest nature and aligning yourself with your true purpose in life, what happens when you actually achieve that? What's the end goal, so to speak?
Well, Crowley believed that when you align yourself with your true will, you tap into a source of immense power and creative energy. You become more fully yourself, more alive, more connected to the flow of the universe.
So it's not just about personal fulfillment, but about becoming a more powerful and effective force in the world.
Exactly. And Crowley believed that this was essential for the evolution of humanity as a whole. He saw the individual's journey of self-discovery as being inextricably linked to the collective journey of our species.
So in a way, finding your true will is not just about you. It's about about contributing to something larger than yourself.
Right, and that's a really important point because I think a lot of people misunderstand Crowley and think that he was all about selfishness and hedonism and just doing whatever you want.
Yeah, he definitely had that reputation.
Yeah, he did, but that was a very superficial reading of him. At the core of his philosophy was this idea of service, of using your talents and abilities to make the world a better place.
Okay, that's interesting. So how did he see true will and service connecting? How do those two things work together?
Well, Crowley believed that when you're living in alignment with your true will, when you're truly being yourself, your actions naturally become more ethical and more aligned with the good of the whole.
So it's like your actions become more authentic, more in tune with your deepest values.
Exactly. And Crowley believed that this was the key to creating a more harmonious and just world. He saw the problems of humanity as stemming from a lack of self-awareness, from people living out of alignment with their true will.
So his solution was basically for everyone to do their own inner work and find their own true path.
Yeah, pretty much. He believed that if enough people did that, it would have a ripple effect and ultimately transform society as a whole.
Okay, I could see how that could be a powerful idea. But I also have to say, it sounds pretty idealistic.
It does, and I'm not saying that Crowley had all the answers or that his philosophy is without its flaws,
Sure.
but I think there's something really valuable in his emphasis on self-knowledge and authenticity and the idea that we each have a unique contribution to make to the world.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a message that I think resonates with a lot of people today.
Definitely, and I think it's a message that's more relevant now than ever. In a world that's so full of noise and distraction and pressure to conform, it's more important than ever to connect with our own inner truth and live a life that's true to ourselves.
Well said.
So that's true will in a nutshell, but like most of Crowley's ideas, there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, we've only just scratched the surface.
Exactly. And there are all sorts of other fascinating concepts that tie into this, like his ideas about the nature of consciousness, the role of ritual and symbolism, the importance of self-discipline, and the idea of spiritual evolution.
So much to explore, but I think we might need to save that for another deep dive.
Definitely.
We're running out of time for today.
Yeah.
But before we go, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, Crowley's idea of magic.
Okay, sure.
Because I think that's something that a lot of people find really intriguing, but also kind of intimidating.
Yeah, it can definitely be both.
So how did Crowley define magic, and how does it fit into his overall philosophy?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, Crowley defined magic as the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will.
Right?
And for him, magic wasn't about supernatural powers or anything like that. It was about understanding the laws of the universe, both the physical laws and the laws of consciousness, and using that understanding to create change in your life.
So it's about taking control of your own destiny, in a way.
Exactly. And Crowley believed that magic was a tool that anyone could use, regardless of their spiritual beliefs or background.
Okay, so it's not something that's only available to a select few.
Right. He saw magic as a natural human ability, something that we all have the potential to develop.
And how did he propose that people go about developing that ability?
Well, he developed a whole system of practices and techniques, many of which were based on ancient traditions like yoga and meditation. But he also emphasized the importance of experimentation and finding what works best for you.
So it's not about following a rigid set of rules, but about finding your own unique approach.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes Crowley's magic so fascinating and so relevant today. It's about empowering individuals to take control of their own lives and create the reality they want to see.
Well, that's a pretty powerful message, and it's definitely something to think about.
It is.
Okay, well, I think that's a good place to wrap up for today.
Yeah, sounds good.
We've covered a lot of ground, but we've only just begun to explore the world of Aleister Crowley.
Right. There's still so much more to discover.
And we'll be diving into some of those deeper layers in part 3 of our deep dive.
Looking forward to it.
So stay tuned, folks, and we'll see you next time. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Aleister Crowley. And, we've talked a lot about some pretty complex ideas, his equation, his concept of true will, his definition of magic. But I'm wondering, what's the takeaway for the average person? I mean, how can we actually apply these ideas to our lives in a practical way?
Well, I think one of the most important things Crowley emphasized was the idea of self-knowledge. He believed that the journey to understanding the universe really begins with understanding yourself.
Right, that makes sense. But how do we actually do that?
He suggested a lot of different techniques, like keeping a diary, analyzing your dreams, experimenting with different forms of meditation, really anything that helps you get to know your own mind better.
So it's about becoming more aware of our thoughts, our emotions, our motivations.
Exactly. Because Crowley believed that a lot of our suffering comes from being unconscious of those things. We react to situations based on our conditioning, our fears, our desires, without really understanding why we're doing what we're doing.
So by becoming more self-aware, we can start to break free from those patterns, those unconscious reactions.
Right, and that's where the idea of true will comes in. Because once you start to understand yourself better, you can start to get a sense of what your true purpose in life might be, what truly motivates you, what brings you joy, what are you naturally good at.
Ah, okay. So self-knowledge is kind of like the foundation for discovering your true will.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And once you start to get a sense of your true will, Crowley believed that you should start aligning your actions with it. He said, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." But, that phrase is often misunderstood.
Oh yeah, it definitely has a bit of a dangerous ring to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, people think it means just do whatever you want, indulge all your desires. But that's not what Crowley meant at all.
So what did he mean?
He meant that you should live in accordance with your true nature, with your deepest purpose. Not the purpose that society imposes on you or the purpose you think you should have, but the purpose that's woven into the very fabric of your being.
Okay, that's a lot more nuanced than just, doing whatever you feel like. But it still sounds pretty encouraging. I mean, how do you know for sure what your true will is? What if you get it wrong?
Well, that's part of the journey. It's not like you just have this sudden epiphany and then boom, you know exactly what you're supposed to do for the rest of your life.
Right.
It's more of a process of experimentation, of trial and error. You try things, you pay attention to what feels right, what brings you a sense of fulfillment, what seems to flow effortlessly, and you adjust course as you go along.
So it's about paying attention to those inner cues, to what resonates with you on a deeper level.
Exactly. And Crowley believed that the more you align yourself with your true will, the more synchronicities you'll start to experience in your life. Things will just start falling into place. You'll meet the right people, you'll find yourself in the right situations, you'll have more energy and enthusiasm for life.
It's like you're tapping into some kind of a universal flow.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And he believed that that flow is ultimately leading us all towards a higher state of consciousness.
Okay, so this is where we get back to his idea of spiritual evolution.
Right. Crowley saw the whole of human history as a process of spiritual unfolding. He believed that we're all moving towards a state of greater awareness, greater compassion, greater unity.
And he believed that magic could play a role in that process.
Yeah, definitely. He saw magic as a tool for accelerating that evolution, for helping us break free from the limitations of our ego and tap into our full potential.
Okay, but how does that actually work? What does magic look like in practice?
Well, it can take many different forms. Crowley was a big advocate for ritual and ceremony. He believed that those things could help to focus our intention and create a powerful, energetic container for transformation.
So it's not just about waving a wand and casting spells.
Right. It's more about creating a sacred space, setting an intention, and then using your will and imagination to bring about change. And Crowley believed that that change could happen on multiple levels, in your own consciousness, in your relationships, in your community, even in the world at large.
So it's about using your will and imagination to shape reality.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And Crowley believed that we're all doing that to some extent, whether we realize it or not. Our thoughts, our beliefs, our expectations all shape the reality we experience.
So magic is about becoming more conscious of that process and learning to use it more deliberately.
Exactly. And that's why Crowley emphasized the importance of self-knowledge. Because the more you understand yourself, the more effectively you can use your will and imagination to create the life you want.
Okay, this is all starting to make more sense now. I have to say, it's a lot to take in.
It is.
Crowley was a complex thinker, and his ideas are definitely not for everyone.
No, they're definitely not mainstream. But I think there's a lot of wisdom in his work, even if you don't agree with everything he said or did.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think it's important to remember that Crowley himself was constantly evolving, constantly questioning his own beliefs and refining his ideas. He wasn't afraid to contradict himself or to change his mind.
Right. And I think that's something we can all learn from. The spiritual journey is not about reaching some fixed destination. It's about being open to new experiences, new ideas, new ways of seeing the world.
Well said. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
We've explored some pretty challenging concepts, but I hope our listeners have found it enlightening or at least thought-provoking.
Me too.
And if you're curious to learn more about Aleister Crowley and his work, there are lots of resources available online and in libraries.
Yeah, definitely.